For centuries, our fight against the spreading desert has pretty much been a battle of brute force. We just build walls to hold back the sand. But what if we've been fighting the wrong war this whole time? What if, instead of fighting the desert, we could actually hack its own logic to make it bloom?
Right now, our go-to weapon is the bulldozer. Yep, we move these massive amounts of earth to build walls or berms, trying to hold back the sand. It's a very direct, head-on approach to a huge, huge problem.
But, and this is a big but, it's an endless, really expensive fight. These walls cost a fortune to build. They burn a ton of fuel, and the second a big storm hits, well, they start to erode. In the long run, the desert always wins. It just pushes right back. So this brings us to a pretty radical question. What if we stopped all the pushing and started guiding instead? What if the answer isn't in heavy machinery at all, but in actually understanding the fundamental physics of how a sand dune works in the first place? And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way, fighting nature, super expensive, and it doesn't last. On the right, this brand new idea, a self-forming dune that actually partners with nature. The goal? To cut the initial cost by 50% or even more. And here's the beautiful part. After a storm, it doesn't just survive, it actually renews itself. So where did this game-changing idea come from? Well, you might be surprised. It didn't come from any desert here on Earth. It came from studying the dunes on Mars. That's right. Planetary science is actually giving us clues to solve a huge problem right here at home. This right here, this was the big aha moment from the Mars research. Scientists found this sort of tipping point for sand. If the slope is below about 22.5 degrees, the wind actually causes sand to build up. But if you make it just a few degrees steeper, the physics completely flips, and the dunes starts to slide and collapse. It's a fundamental rule just written by nature itself. And that discovery leads to this core concept, the sub-repose angle. Basically, by creating a dune with a really gentle slope, we're talking less than 15 degrees, you build a structure that's just naturally stable. The wind and water add to it instead of ripping it apart. You're working with the forces of erosion, not against them.
Now, this isn't about just, crossing our fingers and letting nature run wild. It's about giving it a little nudge with a really clever toolkit of low-cost, high-impact modules that help guide the whole process.
Okay, so let's break down what's in this toolkit. First up, you've got pivot fences. Think of them like rudders on a ship, steering the wind so it drops sand exactly where you want it. Next, for those rare but super intense flash floods, you have bladder dams. They're inflatable and they pop up automatically to catch every single precious drop of water. Then, under the surface, you've got mycelium mats, this living network of fungi that acts like a sponge, holding the dune together and releasing nutrients for plants. And finally, and this is my favorite, the Venturi mesh. It uses pure physics to literally squeeze drinkable water right out of the cool night air. And get this, that Venturi mesh system can generate the equivalent of 20 to 30 millimeters of rainfall every single year. Now, in some of the driest places on Earth, that is a life-giving amount of water, created from what seems like nothing. Okay, now this is where the model gets even smarter. This system isn't just designed to save money. It's designed to actually create value. It turns an environmental defense project into a productive and even potentially profitable business. How? By creating these valuable co-products. For starters, the fine sand itself can be melted down using solar power to create something called sunglass, tiles you could use for greenhouses. Then there's a small pocket power device that can generate electricity right from the salty water it collects, enough to run sensors and lights. And that incredible mycelium mat? Well, it's also a natural fertilizer factory, and it can cut the need for synthetic stuff by over 20%.
So let's circle back to the bottom line here. The goal for this self-forming dune system is an initial cost of 50% or less compared to a conventional bulldozed berm. So, it's cheaper to build, it's cheaper to maintain, and it produces valuable resources all on its own. The choice becomes pretty clear, doesn't it?
So how does this scale up? Well, the ultimate vision here isn't just one dune. It's an entire anti-desert belt, a huge buffer zone that can actually create its own stable microclimates. But the smartest way to do this isn't by building one single gigantic dune. That would just create a single point of failure. Instead, the design takes another cue from nature, this time from the way rivers braid and shape their own channels, to create a much smarter, more resilient hybrid system. And the numbers really show why this hybrid fan and nodes model is so much more effective. It actually uses less sand to build, but it captures more water over a larger area. And most importantly, by spreading the system out across multiple nodes, you get rid of that single point of failure, which makes the whole belt way more resilient to any damage.
And this is the long-term payoff. This is the real vision. In year 1, the dune forms, and it immediately starts breaking the wind and cutting down erosion. By year 2, that fungal layer is cooling the soil and dramatically boosting its water capacity. By year 3, you can actually get shelter trees to take root. And after just 5 years, you have a stable microclimate, one that can support things like low-water orchards downwind of what used to be just barren land.
So, if you take just one thing away from all this, let it be this. This system fundamentally changes our relationship with the desert. It stops the fight, and it starts a partnership, turning the very forces of wind, water, and sand from enemies into allies for restoration. And that leaves us with a final, much bigger question. If we can apply this kind of thinking to something as powerful and seemingly unstoppable as a desert, what other immense forces of nature are we fighting right now that we should be partnering with instead?